The outer edges of Sector 12 were lonely, cold, forgotten. Not many humans worked there, and even fewer asked to be transferred. But Ryan Hawley had no choice. After the collapse of Earth's southern colonies, his engineering contract had been shifted out to this dead-end post near the old mining belt. He didn't complain. He needed the credits. His mother was sick back home, and he had to send medicine monthly. But working alone in the Cordex facility, with only machines and a frozen planet outside, was starting to wear on him. The silence was loud. The walls creaked at night like they were groaning under invisible pressure. It had been 2 months since the last supply drone arrived. He hadn't seen another living soul in 61 days. One morning, while fixing a busted thermal vent in Subdeck 4, he finally gave in. "I need an assistant," he muttered aloud. His voice echoed back at him, hollow and dry. He opened the facility's main AI interface and put in a request. Just a helper. Any species approved by the Galactic Employment Code. Someone to talk to. Someone to help carry the crates of ore samples without grunting in pain. Anyone. 2 days later, the perimeter alarm went off. Ryan wiped the grease off his hands and looked at the monitor. A small transport shuttle had landed just outside the base. His request had been accepted faster than expected. That was odd. The system usually took a week to approve, something as small as a fork replacement. He opened the outer door and watched the shuttle ramp lower. The snow outside whipped through the open hangar, but he didn't care. He was excited. A new assistant meant he could finally sleep 8 hours without being called to reset cooling tanks in the middle of the night. Then, she stepped out. Ryan froze. The first thing he saw was her shadow. It stretched across the snow like a monster from an old Earth storybook. Then her boots landed with a heavy thump. 1, 2. She walked in slow, confident steps. She ducked to fit through the doorway. When she stood to her full height inside the hangar, Ryan took a step back. She was massive, easily 8 feet tall, maybe more with the armor. Her shoulders were broad, her skin a pale gray blue, and her hair was a long, thick braid that touched the middle of her back. Her eyes glowed faintly violet in the dim light. She looked down at him. "You called for assistance," she said in a low voice. It wasn't cold, but it wasn't friendly either. Her accent was thick, but her words were clear. Ryan blinked. Yeah, but I am your assigned support unit," she said. "Designation, Vetra, Combat Class. I was the only available unit in the sector. Combat Class? Yes. I needed help with tools and lifting. Things, not fighting." She stared at him, unmoving. "Do you wish to cancel the contract?" Ryan glanced around awkwardly. He felt like a child standing next to her. She didn't look angry, but there was something powerful about the way she stood. She had scars along her forearms, like she'd been through wars. Yet her expression was calm, controlled. "No," he said finally. No, it's fine. I just didn't expect you." She gave a small nod. Understood. The next few hours were awkward. She didn't talk much. She followed orders, lifted crates like they were pillows, and adjusted equipment faster than any engineer he'd ever seen. But the silence was sharp. She moved like a soldier on patrol, always scanning, always alert. Ryan tried to make small talk. "So, where are you from?" "Classified." "Okay. Ever worked with a human before?" "No." "Do you eat?" "Rarely." That was the end of that conversation. But later that night, as Ryan walked past the central power room, he saw something that made him pause. Vetra was kneeling beside one of the emergency fuel tanks, but she wasn't repairing it. She was whispering to herself in a language he didn't understand. Then she looked up and stared directly at the camera. Ryan quickly turned off the screen. He didn't sleep well that night. Something about this assistant felt off. She was too prepared, too quiet. Like she was watching for something. And in the middle of the night, he heard footsteps outside his room. Heavy ones. Too heavy for any normal being. Ryan lay still on his bunk, eyes open in the darkness. The footsteps had stopped. But his heart was still racing. The door didn't open. No alarms went off. Nothing happened. Still, he sat up and listened. He moved to the control screen beside his bed and checked the hallway camera. Vetra was gone. She wasn't in the assistant quarters. She wasn't on the main deck. Her signal wasn't showing anywhere on the map. That shouldn't have been possible. He threw on his jacket and stepped out, walking quietly down the corridor. The metal floor was cold even through his boots. He passed the engineering bay, the mess hall. Still no sign of her. Then he heard it. The faint sound of metal scraping against metal. He followed it to the storage chamber. The heavy blast door was slightly open, even though it was supposed to be sealed at night. He slipped through and found her standing in the dark, facing a large crate. Her back was to him. Vetra? She didn't move. He stepped closer. Are you okay? She turned slowly, her violet eyes glowing in the dark. You should not be here, she said. I was just checking. I thought I heard something. She looked at him silently for a long moment, then walked past him without saying anything more. Ryan stared at the crate she had been near. It wasn't one he recognized. After she left, he opened the crate. Inside were old weapons. Strange ones. Blades, rifles, things with markings that didn't match any known military tech. They looked ancient, but well kept. Why were they in his facility? He closed the crate quietly and returned to his room. The next morning, Vetra was already working. She acted like nothing had happened. She fixed a broken water line in half the time Ryan would have taken. She carried damaged parts like they were feathers. But she still didn't talk much. During lunch, Ryan decided to ask, "So, what were you doing in storage last night?" She looked up from her meal. "I was verifying supplies." "Looked more like you were staring at a box full of weapons." She paused. "They are mine. You brought weapons into my station?" She stared at him. "This planet is not safe," Ryan blinked. "There's nothing here except snow, rocks, and malfunctioning heaters." She leaned forward slightly. "Then explain the heat signatures beneath the ice." He stared at her. "What heat signatures?" "There are creatures below, moving, watching." Ryan laughed nervously. "Come on, that's not funny. I do not joke," she said. "Something is beneath us, and it is waking up." Ryan shook his head. "We've scanned this area 100 times. There's no life here. Your scans are old. Your machines are weak. I used different methods." She stood and walked away, leaving him sitting there, confused and tense. He didn't believe her. Not really. But later that day, curiosity got the better of him. He ran his own scan. He increased the depth range, adjusted the sensitivity. At first, nothing. Just layers of frozen rock and ice. Then, a spike. A heat signature. Deep underground. Faint, but real. And it was moving. Ryan leaned forward. What the hell? The movement was slow. Almost like crawling. Not natural. It was far deeper than any life should be on this planet. He called up Vetra on the comms. "Okay, you were right. Something's down there." "I know," she said. "What is it?" She didn't answer for a moment. Then she said, "They are old. They feed on silence. They sleep until machines wake them." Ryan swallowed hard. "How? Do you know this?" "I was stationed on 09. We lost the entire base. Same pattern. First silence, then movement, then Death. You think this place is next? It is already happening. Ryan looked at the scanner again. 2 more heat spots appeared next to the first. 3 now. He backed away from the screen. That night, he couldn't sleep again. The wind howled outside the station. The walls seemed to groan louder than before. Every sound felt too sharp, too. Close. At 2:47 a.m., the lights in the base flickered. Backup power kicked in, but the main systems didn't reboot. Ryan rushed to the power core. Vetra was already there, scanning the cables with a handheld device. "Sabotage," she said. "What?" She turned toward him, jaw clenched, from inside. A loud crash echoed from below deck. Ryan and Vetra both turned toward the sound. This time, it wasn't footsteps. It was a growl. Low, wet, hungry. And it came from the ice tunnels. Ones no human had entered in years. Ryan stood frozen. That growl didn't sound mechanical. It wasn't a malfunction or wind noise. It was alive. Vetra lowered her scanner slowly, eyes narrowing. "We need to seal the lower levels, now." He hesitated. Seal them? But what if something's still inside? "There is something inside," she said firmly. "It's testing us." Without waiting, she moved to the wall console and began locking down sections of the facility one by one. Ryan helped, his fingers shaking as he entered the codes. As each door sealed shut, the sound of movement grew louder below. Clunk, drag, scrape. "Something massive. I thought this planet was dead," Ryan whispered. "It was," Vetra said, "until humans came mining into old ground." "You think we woke it up?" She gave a single nod. "We always wake them." Ryan swallowed the lump in his throat. "What are they?" "No one knows," she said. "Old species. Older than the known galaxy. Silent, patient, hungry." They moved through the base, checking each room and hallway. Vetra carried one of the strange weapons from her crate, now a black twisted rifle humming with low energy. Ryan had never seen anything like it. When they reached the ice tunnel access door, it was covered in frost. And something else. Claw marks. Deep ones. "They're trying to come through," Ryan said. "They won't." "Not yet. They're still watching us," Vetra replied. He turned to her. "Why did you really come here? You weren't sent just because I asked for help, were you?" She didn't answer immediately. Then, finally, she said, "My people hunt them. Not many of us are left." Ryan stared. "So, you knew they were here?" "I suspected." "Your base lies on an old burial trench. Your scanners never saw it, but the dead did." He leaned against the wall, breathing hard. "Why didn't you tell me? You wouldn't have believed me." He couldn't argue with that. Even now, with claw marks in front of him, part of him still struggled to believe this was real. Then the lights flickered again. But this time, they didn't come back on. Total darkness. Red emergency lights clicked on across the base. Ryan's earpiece crackled. "They're inside," Vetra said calmly. He spun around. "Where?" "Sublevel 2. Engineering bay." The sealed door wasn't enough. Ryan ran. His boots pounded the metal floor. He didn't wait for Vetra, he just needed to stop them before they reached the reactor core. If they damaged it, the whole base could go up in fire and ice. As he reached sublevel 2, he heard it again. The scraping, the breathing, and then eyes, red and wet, dozens of them, blinking out from the shadows, attached to long, writhing shapes that slithered like muscle-covered snakes with claws. They were unlike anything he'd seen in any galactic record. They moved like predators, silent, watching him. One of them lunged, before Ryan could scream. A burst of energy slammed into the creature's side. It exploded into dark steam. Vetra stood at the top of the stairs, rifle in hand, glowing with energy. "Stay behind me," she said. Two more of the creatures charged. Vetra didn't flinch. She shot them both mid-leap, blasting them into the walls. Ryan ducked behind a crate, grabbing a small plasma torch, the only tool he had. The creatures kept coming. 5, 10, more. They were trying to overrun the core room. We can't fight all of them. Ryan shouted. We don't have to. Vetra said, we just need to trap them. She tossed Ryan a metal beacon. Place that near the coolant pipe, quickly. He sprinted across the room, barely dodging a swipe from a nearby monster. He slapped the beacon against the pipe. Done. Get out, she shouted. Ryan ran back as Vetra fired at the pipe. The beacon exploded, and freezing gas burst into the room, slowing the monsters as they screamed in pain. Vetra switched weapons, a double-bladed staff now, and charged in, slicing through them with deadly precision. It was like watching a storm fight a pack of wolves. When it was over, the room was silent. Steam rose from the ice-covered floor. Broken bodies lay still in the cold mist. Ryan was shaking. You saved the base. Vetra stood quietly, breathing slowly. That was just the first wave. His eyes widened. There are more? She nodded. Hundreds, maybe thousands. You only see a few because the rest are still waiting. 4. What? For the right moment. They are testing your defenses? Your fear. Ryan looked around the destroyed room, the cold creeping in from the broken pipes. How long do we have? Vetra's voice was low. Not long. If they rise, this planet will fall. And then they'll spread. Ryan stood straight. Then we stop them here. For the first time, Vetra gave a small, approving smile. The base was quiet again, but it wasn't peaceful. Ryan stood in the damaged engineering bay, staring at the broken bodies of the creatures. Some were still twitching, their skin melting from the coolant spray. The stench of burnt flesh and frozen air mixed in the room. He looked at Vetra. Her armor was scorched. Part of her shoulder bled slowly from a deep gash, but she didn't seem to notice. She stood tall, eyes locked on the dark tunnels. They'll come again, she said softly. Ryan nodded. Then we prepare. They moved fast. Power was partially restored, but several sections remained offline. Communications were still dead. Ryan had tried to send a distress signal, but there was no response. The ice storms above made it impossible to connect with orbit. As Vetra patched holes in the defense grid, Ryan asked, what exactly are these things? You said they're ancient, but from where? She paused. They were here before the stars had names. We don't know where they came from. Only that they rise when death worlds go silent. He frowned. Death worlds? Vetra met his gaze. Worlds where life was once strong, but something hunted it down to the last breath. The worlds died, and the creatures stayed behind waiting. You fought them before? Yes, once. Her voice changed slightly. My squad died. All of them. Ryan looked at her closely. So you were the only one left. I am not just a soldier, Ryan. She glanced toward her weapons case. I was chosen, bred, engineered. My people created warriors like me to stand against these monsters. You mean you're not natural? She hesitated. I was born in a lab, grown from the blood of hunters and warriors. I was never meant to know peace, only war. Ryan didn't know what to say. He had met strong beings before, mercenaries, battle droids, even cybernetic commandos. But Vetra was different. She had sadness behind her power. She didn't want to be what she was. I'm sorry, he said quietly. She nodded once. Don't be. I exist to stop this. Later that evening, they rigged traps near the remaining tunnels. Ryan had an idea, using old mining explosives to collapse parts of the underground, where the creatures might be hiding. Won't that destroy half the station? She asked. Only the parts we don't use, he replied. Unless you have a better idea. She gave a small smile. I like it. They worked through the night, placing charges, checking maps, and sealing doors. Every few hours, Ryan saw movement in the scanners, just shadows, shapes slipping through cracks. Watching. They're learning, Vetra said. Every minute we survive, they adapt. The next attack came at dawn. Not through the tunnels this time. From above. The ice ceiling of the outer hangar exploded inward. Dozens of the creatures dropped through, their black flesh steaming as they hit the warm air. Ryan fired his mining tool. It wasn't a weapon, but it burned a hole through the first creature's head. Vetra moved like lightning. Her staff spun, slicing limbs and necks. She stood over Ryan, defending him as if she were born for this. He backed up and activated the charges one by one. Sections of the roof caved in, crushing enemies under tons of ice, but more kept coming. Ryan and Vetra fell back to the command center, locking the doors behind them. We can't hold this, Ryan said, panting. There are too many. Vetra placed a hand on the glass wall, staring at the creatures crawling through the ruins. Then we used the core. Ryan stared. At her? The fusion core? That'll blow everything. It will destroy the station, she agreed, but also the trench. The hive, Ryan hesitated. You'll die too, she looked at him. I was never meant to live long. He shook his head. No, there has to be another way. There isn't. The room shook. The creatures were clawing at the final door. Only seconds left. Then Ryan looked at the emergency shuttle dock. There's one pod left. Vetra stepped forward. Take it. Go. He reached for her arm. Not without you. I'm too heavy. The pod won't lift with my weight. Then, we make it lift. For the first time, she looked unsure. Ryan grabbed her hand. You saved my life. Now let me save yours. Another slam. The last door cracked. They ran. Ryan overloaded the core with a 60-second timer. Vetra helped throw out extra weight from the shuttle crates, tools, storage racks. They crammed into the pod just as the door burst open behind them. The creatures screamed. The base exploded. The escape pod shook violently as it launched upward, barely outrunning the massive fireball behind it. Ryan held tightly to the handles, teeth clenched. Beside him, Vetra sat still, eyes closed as if the chaos didn't bother her at all. Flames and chunks of ice flew past the small viewing window. The fusion core had gone critical. The cortex base was gone. Everything they had worked on destroyed. But they were alive. The pod soared through the upper atmosphere, breaking through clouds of smoke and ash. Warning lights flashed and the engine screamed from overload. The tiny craft was never meant for two people, especially not someone of Vetra's size and weight. Ryan looked at her. You okay? She opened one eye slowly. I'm still here. Barely. We're burning fuel fast. The pod started to shake again. A red light lit up on the panel. Engine overheating. Ryan cursed under his breath. We're not gonna make orbit. Then find a place to land, she said calmly. I'll try. He grabbed the manual controls and forced the pod to turn east. There were no colonies nearby, just frozen plains and old mining ridges. But he spotted something, a black ridge of stone that looked stable enough for a crash landing. The pod hit hard. Metal crumpled. Sparks flew. Snow exploded all around them. The pod bounced, slid, and finally came to a grinding halt against a rocky hill. Silence. Then Ryan groaned. I think I broke something, he muttered. You didn't, Vetra said. You're just soft, he smiled weakly. Thanks for the encouragement. The pod systems were fried. No radio, no heating. Just a cracked shell and a pile of smoke. They stepped out into the cold. The wind howled, but the storm hadn't reached this far yet. Vetra looked around, scanning the horizon. No sign of them, she said. Ryan breathed out slowly. Then maybe we actually stopped them. Maybe. They found a small cave nearby. It wasn't warm, but it was shelter from the wind. Ryan built a fire using emergency supplies from the pod. They sat in silence, the flames flickering between them. Vetra looked into the fire. You did well, Ryan. He glanced up. You mean, for a soft human? Her lips curled into a small smile. Better than most warriors I've known. Ryan hesitated. So what now? Do we just wait to freeze? Or hope someone finds us? She reached into her belt and pulled out a glowing stone-like device. They will. He blinked. What is that? A beacon, but not from your tech. My people will come for me, now that the hive is broken. You could have used that earlier. I only activate it after the target is destroyed, not before. Otherwise, the hive senses it. Ryan shook his head in disbelief. So we were back up the whole time? No, she said softly. We were a team. Hours passed. They spoke more as the fire crackled. Ryan learned about Vetra's world-twin moons, cities carved into cliffs, a race of warrior women bred for strength and silence. But she hated the silence. That's why she volunteered to leave. She wanted to feel something other than orders. And Ryan. He finally understood what it meant to matter in a war. Even a small technician could help stop ancient monsters. Suddenly, Vetra stood. She turned toward the cave entrance. Ryan followed her gaze. Far in the distance, blue lights flashed through the clouds. A ship, not human? Your people? He asked. She nodded. They'll land soon. He smiled, then hesitated. Will I see you again? She didn't answer immediately. Then she stepped forward, placing her large hand on his chest. If the stars are kind. Yes. The lights grew closer. Wind rushed into the cave. Dust swirled around them. Vetra took one last look at the fire, then at Ryan. Don't forget what we did here. I won't. She stepped into the light. The ship descended slowly, black and silver. Sharp wings. It hovered just above the ground. Two tall figures stepped out, wearing the same armor as Vetra. One saluted her. The other glanced at Ryan with curiosity. Vetra said something in her native tongue. The others nodded. Then she looked at Ryan one last time and climbed aboard. The ship rose, spinning into the clouds, then vanished like a dream. Ryan stood there, alone in the snow. The cold bit at his skin, but he didn't feel it. He had survived something no human had seen before, and deep inside, he knew this wasn't the end. 3 days passed since the ship took Vetra away. Ryan had managed to fix the emergency heating system using parts from the escape pod. He stayed in the cave, surviving off ration packs and melted snow. No human. Rescue ships had come. No signal answered. He was completely alone, but something had changed inside him. He was no longer just an engineer. He had faced monsters older than memory. He had stood beside a warrior who was born for war. And he had survived. Still, a strange feeling tugged at him. Unfinished business. Each night, he dreamed of the trench beneath the Cortex base. He saw shadows slithering in ice, and something deeper, something massive still sleeping. On the fourth night, the dream stopped. Instead, Ryan woke up to a strange glow outside the cave. He stepped out into the snow, heart racing, hovering above. The ridge was a dark craft, sleek, silent, nothing like human design. It descended slowly, landing in a perfect circle of melted snow. A ramp extended down and a tall figure stepped out. Not Vetra. Another giantess shorter by a foot, with silver armor and sharp eyes. She held a small device in her hand. Ryan Hale? She asked. He nodded slowly. Yes. You are summoned. Summoned by who? By the High Council of Telvara, Ryan blinked. Telvara? That's Vetra's world? The Giantess nodded. You are to answer for your actions. I didn't do anything wrong. You fought beside a classified combat agent. You triggered a fusion detonation near a sealed trench. You touched ancient technology meant only for warriors. Ryan stepped back. Wait, are you arresting me? The Giantess tilted her head. No, we are recruiting you. Before he could ask more, a gentle force pulled him upward. The ship absorbed him in light, and the hatch closed behind him. Inside, the air was warm and clean. The walls glowed faint blue, and strange symbols pulsed along the corridors. Ryan had never seen tech this advanced. The silver-armored woman led him into a wide room filled with strange floating panels and hollow images. A circle of tall figures stood waiting warriors, scholars, and one cloaked figure with a golden emblem across her chest. She stepped forward. I am Commander Yelry. Vetra has spoken of you. Ryan raised an eyebrow. She mentioned me? Yes, she broke protocol for you. Protected you. Chose you. He was speechless. You are the first human to survive contact with the Findefifinus. Buried ones, she continued. And you are the first outsider to awaken the deep signal. Ryan frowned. What signal? Yelry raised her hand. A screen lit up, showing a strange pulse waves of energy coming from deep underground, far beyond the crater where the base used to be. The fusion blast triggered a chain reaction, she said. You did not destroy the hive. You uncovered the gate beneath it. Ryan stepped closer. Gate to what? To the world where the buried ones were born. A sealed dimension, a prison. Your detonation cracked the surface. His heart dropped. So we made it worse? She nodded. But also, timely. Another panel opened, showing images of similar cracks on other planets. Ancient ruins lighting up, creatures waking across the stars. It's happening everywhere, Ryan whispered. Yelry looked at him. That's why we need you. I'm not a soldier. No, she said. You're something rarer. A survivor. A thinker. A man who ran toward danger when others would have run away. He stared at her. What do you want me to do? You will train. You will learn, and when the buried ones rise again, you will stand beside Vetra. Ryan's heart jumped. She's alive? She waits for you, Yelry said. But only if you accept the path. He thought about the freezing nights, the blood in the snow, the monsters clawing at steel. He thought of Vetra's silent strength and the way she had fought beside him. He looked at Yelry and nodded. I'll do it. The room pulsed with light. Then your journey begins now, she said. 3 months later. Ryan Hawley stood on the surface of a red moon, wearing armor that wasn't human. It was lighter than any exosuit he'd worn before, yet stronger than steel. Built by the Telvaran engineers, the suit reacted to his thoughts. It adjusted to his body perfectly. He had trained everyday physical drills, survival simulations, and combat against hollow creatures based on the buried ones, and now it was time. The gate had fully awakened. Scouts had confirmed the truth deep under the trench where Cortex Base once stood. Something far more ancient had begun to stir. The creatures they fought before were only fragments, echoes of what was buried deeper. A true one was rising. The Telvaran Council called it the first Maw being so large it could swallow cities, so old it had forgotten its own name. Its mind reached across stars. It didn't just kill, it converted, twisted life into more of itself. Rian stood at the edge of the new command ship, staring down at the cracked planet below. It was time to finish what he and Vetra had started. A heavy thud behind him made him turn. She was there. Vetra. Fully armored, glowing faintly with energy, her massive form still graceful as ever. But something was different in her eyes, softer, calmer. She had waited. "You're late," she said. Ryan smiled. "Had to make sure I looked good for battle." She stepped closer and looked at him. "You've changed." "So have you," he replied. "You don't look like you're running." "Anymore." "I'm not." She extended a hand. He took it. Together they dropped from the ship. The descent was fast. Below, the trench had become a deep pit of swirling black light. Creatures crawled along the ridges more than before, more twisted. Some had wings. Others moved like liquid. Shadow. But this time, Ryan and Vetra weren't alone. An entire Telvaran strike team landed with them giants. Just like her, all armored, all silent. Ryan was the only human among them. He was also the first to charge. With Vetra at his side, he ignited the gauntlet on his right hand and slammed it into the ground, releasing a blast wave that knocked several of the monsters backward. Behind him, the warriors roared as they moved forward. The sky turned dark. The ground shook. From the trench, it rose, the first maw, a tower of flesh, teeth and eyes, endless limbs. It screeched, and the sound wasn't just noise, it was a voice inside. The mind. Ryan nearly collapsed as pain ripped through his skull. But then, Vetra stood in front of him and roared back. Her battle cry was loud, deep, full of rage and fire. The others followed. And Ryan, he rose too. They fought like lightning against the storm. Blades cut through shadow. Explosions ripped the frozen rock. Ryan used every skill he had learned, quick moves, fast thinking, risky strikes. He was small compared to the others, but he was faster, smarter. And then, the opening came, a pulse in the Maw's chest. A weak point. Ryan knew what he had to do. He activated the fusion charge strapped to his back. One blast powerful enough to tear through its core. But he had to get close. "I'm going in," he shouted. Vetra grabbed his arm. "You won't survive that." He looked into her glowing eyes. "Maybe not. But it'll stop this thing forever." She stared at him for a moment. Then slowly she took the charge from his hand. "I'll go," she said. "No," he said, voice breaking. "I can't lose you again," she smiled. "You won't." Then she pulled him close and kissed his forehead gently. "I was built for endings," she whispered. "But you're built to live." Before he could stop her, she leapt high straight into the Maw's open chest. A second later, the explosion lit up the sky. The creature screamed, shook, and collapsed into itself. Silence followed. Smoke and ash drifted across the ruins. The other creatures froze, then melted away like they were never real. The war was over. Ryan stood among the ruins, heart heavy and burning. He had saved a galaxy, but lost the only person who ever truly stood beside him. Then a voice came through his cums. "Next time," it said softly, "you're the one jumping." He spun around. There. She was alive. Her armor cracked, her body wounded, but walking. Ryan ran to her. This time he didn't let go.